The reason you are suffering is not because life is hard, but because you believed it was supposed to be easy. Peace is not the absence of the storm, it is the realization that you are the ocean, and the ocean is never truly disturbed by what happens on its surface. You have spent your life building glass houses of expectation, then acting surprised when the first stone of reality shatters the illusion. You are currently operating under the greatest cognitive error of the modern age, the belief that your internal state should be a reflection of your external circumstances. When the world is loud, you become frantic. When the pressure rises, your spirit collapses. You have outsourced your soul to a world that doesn't even know you exist. You are a king who has forgotten he owns the mountain, choosing instead to beg for scraps of validation at the foot of the hill. Today, we stop begging. We begin the construction of the fortress. The first pillar of your internal architecture is the dichotomy of control. This is the ultimate filter for a chaotic mind. Most of your exhaustion comes from trying to move furniture in a house that isn't yours. You fret over the opinions of people you don't even like, you lose sleep over economic shifts you cannot influence, you bleed energy into the what-ifs of a non-existent tomorrow. Stoicism demands a brutal audit. Is this within my power? If the answer is no, it is indifferent. This doesn't mean the event is unimportant, it means it no longer has the right to disturb your peace. You can work for a promotion, but you do not control the boss's decision. You can train for a race, but you do not control the weather on race day. When you tie your happiness to the outcome rather than the effort, you are handing a leash to the universe and asking it to drag you through the mud. By mastering the dichotomy of control, you reclaim the only territory you truly own, your judgment and your will. Everything else is just weather. The second principle you must integrate is amor fati, the radical love of fate. This is not a passive resignation or a giving up. It is the aggressive, intellectual choice to treat every obstacle as fuel. Imagine a fire. If a fire is small, a gust of wind blows it out. If a fire is ablaze, that same wind makes it a conflagration. You must become the blaze. The pressure you feel right now is not a signal to retreat, it is the friction required to sharpen your blade. Without the resistance of the atmosphere, the bird cannot fly. Without the crushing weight of the earth, the diamond remains carbon. When life throws a crisis at you, your response shouldn't be "Why is this happening to me?" but "How can I use this to become unshakable?" This is the shift from victimhood to alchemy. You stop asking for the burden to be lighter and start asking for your shoulders to be broader. You don't just accept the storm, you love the storm for what it forces you to become. Third, we employ premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This is the psychological armor of the elite. While the masses are blinded by toxic positivity, hoping that things will just work out, the architect prepares for the collapse. You must sit in the silence and vividly imagine the worst-case scenarios. Imagine losing your job, your reputation, or your health. This is not morbid pessimism, it is strategic inoculation. By facing the shadows in your mind, you strip them of their power to surprise you. When the crisis actually arrives, it doesn't find a panicked victim, it finds a veteran who has already lived through it 1,000 times in contemplation. You realize that even in the wreckage, your character remains intact. You discover that you can survive much more than your comfort-addicted brain wants you to believe. Fear is a ghost that disappears when you walk straight through it. Fourth, you must establish an unshakable internal locus of control. Most people are like corks bobbing in the ocean, moved by every wave of trend, criticism, or luck. To build resilience, you must become the anchor. This means your sense of self-worth and success is derived entirely from internal metrics, your integrity, your discipline, and your adherence to your own code. If the world praises you, it doesn't change your value. If the world mocks you, it doesn't change your value. You become a closed system. Modern life is designed to keep you in an external locus, constantly checking your phone for the next hit of dopamine or validation. You are being farmed for your attention. To break free, you must realize that the only person's permission you need to be great is your own. When you stop looking for the green light from society, you realize you've been standing on the accelerator the whole time. The fifth pillar is radical acceptance, a bridge between Stoic logic and Zen stillness. Pressure often comes from our resistance to what is. We spend massive amounts of cognitive energy wishing things were different. I shouldn't be in this traffic, he shouldn't have said that, it shouldn't be raining. This resistance is the second arrow. The first arrow is the event itself, the second arrow is your emotional reaction to it. You cannot always avoid the first arrow, but the second one is optional. Radical acceptance is the practice of saying yes to the present moment without judgment. It is the realization that, at this exact millisecond, reality cannot be any other way than it is. By stopping the internal war against reality, you preserve your energy for the actual work that needs to be done. You move with the flow of the river, not because you are weak, but because you are wise enough to use the river's momentum to reach your goal. You seek control to feel safe. But the paradox of the human condition is that the more you try to control the external, the more of a prisoner you become to your own anxiety. True power is not the ability to manipulate the world to fit your desires, it is the ability to maintain your center regardless of what the world does. You are currently obsessed with fixing your life, but perhaps your life doesn't need fixing, your lens does. The noise of the city, the demands of your career, the isolation of the digital age, these are not bugs in the system, they are the features of the landscape. You do not demand that a mountain be flat before you climb it. You simply climb. The sixth pillar of the architect's internal fortress is memento mori, the meditation on mortality. Most people treat death as a distant glitch in the system, something to be ignored until it is unavoidable. This denial is exactly why you feel so much pressure. You act as if you have forever to fix your problems, forever to be happy, and forever to endure the things you hate. Stoicism argues that death is not a future event, it is a current process. The time that has passed is already dead. By bringing the reality of your finitude into the present moment, you sharpen your focus. When you realize that your time is the only truly non-renewable resource, the high-stakes pressure of a corporate meeting or a social disagreement suddenly loses its teeth. You stop being afraid of failing and start being afraid of not truly living. Memento mori is not a depressing thought, it is the ultimate liberation. It allows you to strip away the trivial and commit your energy only to what is essential. You are a dying man in a room full of dying people, what is there to be anxious about? Seventh, we must master the inversion of obstacles. Most minds see a barrier and think stop. The Zen strategist sees a barrier and asks, how is this the path? Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is the ultimate mental judo. If you are faced with a difficult colleague, they are not a nuisance, they are a weight in the gym of your patience. If you face a financial setback, it is not a catastrophe, it is an invitation to innovate and test your resourcefulness. Pressure is nothing more than information. It tells you where your weaknesses are. Instead of resenting the pressure, you should thank it for identifying the cracks in your armor. The architect doesn't wish for a world without obstacles, they recognize that the obstacle is the very material they must use to build their legacy. Eighth is the practice of voluntary hardship. We live in an era of unprecedented comfort, and comfort is a slow-acting poison for the soul. It makes you fragile. It makes the smallest inconvenience feel like a tragedy. To combat this, you must intentionally seek out discomfort. Cold showers, fasting, sleeping on the floor, or tackling the hardest task first thing in the morning, these are not acts of self-punishment. They are training for the great winter of life. When you prove to yourself that you can be happy and effective even when you are hungry, cold, or tired, you break the power that the external world has over you. You realize that your well-being is not dependent on the thermostat or the softness of your bed. By choosing the difficult path when you don't have to, you ensure that when life forces you onto a difficult path, you are already a veteran of that terrain. You become anti-fragile, you don't just survive the stress, you grow because of it. Ninth, we move to the Zen principle of the view from above. When you are in the middle of a high-pressure situation, your perspective narrows. You develop tunnel vision, where your immediate problem feels like the center of the universe. This narrow focus is where anxiety thrives. To break it, you must mentally zoom out. Imagine looking down at yourself from the ceiling, then from the clouds, then from the orbit of the moon. See your city, your country, the spinning blue marble of the earth. From this height, your crushing pressure becomes an invisible speck. You see the billions of people who have lived and died before you, all of whom had their own emergencies that are now forgotten. This isn't about making your life feel small, it's about making your problems manageable. It is the realization that you are part of a vast, cosmic play. This strategic indifference to the outcome allows you to perform with the grace of an artist rather than the desperation of a victim. The 10th and final pillar is the discipline of virtue. In the face of pressure, the first thing most people sacrifice is their character. They lie to save face, they cut corners to meet deadlines, they lash out at others to vent their frustration. But the architect knows that your character is the only thing you take with you into the grave. Virtue is not a moral should, it is a competitive advantage. When you act with integrity, justice, and courage, you eliminate the internal friction of guilt and shame. You gain a clarity of purpose that the shortcut seekers will never know. High performance without virtue is just a sophisticated form of burnout. You must commit to being the most honorable person in the room, especially when it is hardest to do so. Your fortress is held together by the mortar of your actions, not your words. Now, we arrive at the ultimate synthesis, the framework for total internal sovereignty. The world is chaotic, noisy, and indifferent to your plans. You cannot change the world, but you can change the interface through which you experience it. The secret to unshakable power is not found in winning the game, but in realizing that you are the one who defines what winning looks like. You are no longer chasing happiness, which is a fleeting emotion dependent on luck. You are chasing eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul through the exercise of reason and resilience. The logic is simple, yet brutal. If you can remain calm while others panic, you have already won. If you can find beauty in the struggle, you can never be defeated. If you can look at the worst that life has to offer and say, "Is this all?" then you have achieved the state of the architect. You are no longer a victim of the storm, you have become the mountain that the storm breaks itself against. The noise of the world is just background music to your internal symphony. The pressure is just the heat required to forge the steel of your will. Walk forward with the cold clarity of a Stoic and the silent presence of a Zen master. The fortress is built. The gates are closed. You are finally, truly, free.